Hello, and welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries take you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph as they share the very stories that have shaped them.
Tim Hasse, welcome to Locality Bank's Making Bank podcast.
Thanks for having me, Keith. I'm glad to be here.
So that's a really special podcast because Tim is the founder of General Provision, which is where we're doing the podcast and where we've done all the podcasts right here. It's also very special to me because it's where Locality Bank started. And back in 2020, when I started, I had a little desk here upstairs, and I was working on the business plan for 8 months out of this place, and then we launched the bank right here, and this is our headquarters still, which people don't recognize. We're a $100 million bank now. We have about a 200 square foot office upstairs. So per square foot, we are, we have more assets per square foot than any bank in the world, we believe. But we're also in the cloud, so that's how we're able to do it. So, but anyway, this is not about Locality Bank. It's about Tim Hasse and General Provision and all the things that you've done. So Tim, let's go back to your origin. Where are you from? I always like to start out that way. A little history.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the Locality story is our story, right? So it's very easy to tie the things together here. But I'm a Floridian. I grew up on the west coast of Florida on Anna Maria Island. But after college, I ended up down here. And
which school?
I went to school in Jacksonville University.
Okay.
I played football up there. That's really the only reason why I stayed in the state. Otherwise, I would have went north to play in other places. But I wanted to stay warm.
Yeah.
And so being by the water and being in the ocean often is important to me, and it was especially important to me as a youngster. So I came down after and began corporate life.
In Fort Lauderdale?
In Fort Lauderdale, right?
Okay.
So I graduated from university, came down to Fort Lauderdale and began my professional career.
You didn't get a pro contract in the NFL?
No, I flirted with the CFL.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I have one check, and they cut me. Then they cut me. So I moved on. I don't talk about it much because it wasn't
That's
real.
More than most people get.
It was a fun ride. Yeah. So I got to play a lot of football during my life, and athletics are an important part of my upbringing and really my thinking even in business. So I think that's relevant. And I think there's a really interesting juxtaposition of removing the athletic mentality to business because real life doesn't always operate like the football field, So there's
sometimes we wish it did. You could just tackle that person.
That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Beat on them.
Yeah. And as a linebacker, that's really upsetting to me that we can't just do that sometimes. But so that's the story there.
Friend, man. I'm not going to get tackled.
This is a safe spot. And I'm the nice guy with a temper, right? So I had to figure out how to do that in business, and something that was always kind of rewarded on the playing field was use that streak to get what you need, right? So that was a huge adjustment into the real world, of course. But Fort Lauderdale became home, and corporate life began. I'm a designer by trade, so I went to the creative scene, and I was really a unique college student because I was an athlete in the arts program. So as a fine arts student, there weren't many of us. And coming down into Fort Lauderdale, even as I began my professional career, it was really hard for me to get plugged in. I was struggling to find my people. Where were the other people that were interested in the things that I was professionally interested in, really, building a career, getting ahead. And my career path went from agency life, designer, art director, creative director, into more of a marketing role, corporate marketing role. And that's where I really was exposed to the business side, as opposed to just making creative decisions. I was thrown into a small company a family business that IPO'd. So it was a very cool experience. And I got to see a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have seen if I was in a larger organization in those same circumstances. And that's where I really kind of cut my chops as a professional. But
Which company was that?
That company's called Mile Marker. They're in the automotive aftermarket. And they're a manufacturer of recovery products for off-road products. It's a fun brand. And as a young guy, I was doing Jeep life and ATV life. It was a really fun journey. I traveled around the world. It was a fun company to work with. But it also had a lot of small business turmoil, right? Family-run business and challenges from that. I got to navigate government contracts, and I got to build a national sales team, and really do a lot of interesting things as a global marketing director. And I think without that experience, it was for me, as somebody who wasn't an MBA guy, had no real business support in my life. I think that was really critical for me to jump off the ledge and build my own thing.
Yeah. So when did the company IPO, and then what happened with you?
Yeah. So I think the IPO was 2006, and it was during that era where a lot of companies went public way too early, and as a young professional, I have no idea this was just happening, right? At that point in the company, I was just an employee, and I didn't really have any opinion on whether this was good or bad, right? But it was just a really interesting dynamic. The company really was never doing over $50 million in revenue, and they IPO'd, and it was really just money off the table for the founding team. And an interesting ride for me, because I was like really a part of all that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if it was the right or the wrong move. It turns out it was really like the beginning of some more complicated management decisions. So I was just kind of watching this company. Really, I was building the product line, but seeing managers at this level, I thought were competent humans, kind of turn over and over again. So there were 6 CEOs while I was there.
Wow.
And so the writing was on the wall that I was, ready to move on. And for me, as I mentioned, not coming from a business background, really being a product guy and a creative, jumping into that mindset, there felt like a big barrier there for me, right? I had a lot of insecurity and still do, right? I still look at myself through a certain lens as a technologist and creative problem solver. Being a business guy and financial engineer and all the things that business owners need to be was way out of my comfort zone. So I think looking back, I probably scooped up as much value in that experience as I could, and then segued that into my entrepreneurial journey. They became my first client, which was very cool.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I left and began what was my first company, a software company called Trim, and which was very quickly preceded General Provision. That company was just an agency model. And looking back at what I knew, that was actually the dream that I had in college. I wanted to be a creative. I wanted to build things. I wanted to design things. I wanted to create amazing experiences. And the pinnacle of uncomplicated business models for me as a young college student was owning an agency.
Yeah.
Right. Having a creative agency where we're doing and building interesting things, solving unique problems, and having a brain trust of talented humans that could do that well. That's what I wanted to do.
Wow.
And so I left the corporate world to begin that. And it's actually the easiest business to get into, right? I think that's where General Provision, the birth of General Provision, is relevant, because we support so many people that have kind of gone down that similar trajectory in the agency life.
I think that's so cool that you highlight, so we hear this again and again with entrepreneurs, right? They have insecurities. They have fear. They're hey, I can't do that. I never did this. This is my, I'm a designer. And when you push through it and you said, oh, well, I'm going to do this. And you founded, you got Trim going. And then the next business was this one.
Was GP. Yeah. So, so you jump off and you got to figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
And for us, completely bootstrapped. Right. I mean, the first business, I cashed in my 401k to finance the company. And we quickly needed an office, right? We were remote first by design, especially as a tech company in South Florida. This is going back to 2010. Mm-hmm. The scene was very, very different back then.
Yeah.
And the anxiety that I had was, I can't find anyone to hire. The talent for software engineers and development professionals was very, very difficult to find. There were not a lot of us in the industry. And locally in South Florida, right? And even finding other tech companies was a difficult conversation to have. There was a definition of digital agencies in the marketing world that kind of blended, but when you got into real product development and needing to find people that actually wrote code at a high level, those are really difficult conversations to seek out here locally, at least from little old me from little old nowhere, right?
Yeah.
So the solution for me was to try to build a place where we could gather and to see if that would work. It was a pure experiment. It had no business model. General Provision had no plan. We wanted to build a space where we could kind of attract the creative and technology community when there wasn't much of one. And that was the game plan. It stopped there. We needed to do some work in an office from time to time, even though we were largely remote. So we began through that direction, and it worked. That's
was
the
over
General
in
Provision
Fat
story.
Village,
The
right?
beginning was in Fat Village, in the warehouse district. The art and tech district was an easy decision for me. There was not much of an art and tech district when I first saw the space, but CrossFit brought me there, actually. So there was a CrossFit building there, and I was like, okay, the CrossFit gym is the only business in the art and tech district, really. I don't really understand it, but I want to be in the art and tech district too. So we committed to building, a tech company and a creative community in the art and tech district, and that's where General Provision began.
And so, how about money? Because that requires some money to get that going, right? How'd you get to your money? How'd you bootstrap it?
So, like I said, I was all in. So I had little capital, and back to the insecurity of not a business minded person. I was totally afraid of what a bank would say or how do I get this going. So
banks are scary.
I committed to doing it myself, right? And so I rode on a motorcycle for 2 years, cashed in the 401k, and I partnered 50-50 at GP in our first location with co-founder Charlie Lawrence, who was pivotal. We built the space together. He's a great local entrepreneur, but ultimately he was doing 10 other business at once. So he needed to kind of focus on other things. So
to get him on the show.
Yeah, I was able to. We were able to buy him out and focus on GP exclusively. But between he and I, we built the original location and went all in together. Finance-wise, we just went 50-50 and just made it work. And it was shoestring budget, a lot of ingenuity. I like to share with anyone that's been to Fat Village that our blood is in the walls there, right? Literally, we hammered nails and made desks, and that was the beginning.
It was such a cool spot too. So we had another bank before this one, and we had a desk over there in Fat Village, and that was our first kind of exposure to that scene because as you say, banks are scary, right? To a lot of people, they're intimidated by that. So for us, it's like, hey, let's go and sit with the creatives. Let's go and sit with the cool kids table, kind of, and see what happens. So for us, it was great. It led us to be in here. So, but so that first launch over there, how did it go?
We were welcomed from an event capacity really strong. So there was very little plan. Both my co-founder and myself were running other companies at once, which is kind of another hindsight big lesson. And I think you get that. A lot of smart mentors, investors, bankers will always tell you that, absent founder or multiple things going on, and even, just my recommendation is, you have to go all in and you have to be in very deep to be really effective. And I have the scars of trying to build two companies in parallel at once, bootstrapping really two companies at once before we took an investment money. So we'll get to that journey as General Provision grew. But in the early days, the launch was really great from a community building perspective, but we weren't making any money, right? We had no intention really to make money in the beginning. And really we needed an office and we wanted to build community. So our initiatives early were to have great events, create a place where people would gather, galvanize the tech and creative community. And from that perspective, it was really successful. I think the turning point for the business began when we first recruited the first coding academy in Broward County up from Miami. So we partnered with WinCode, which is now BrainStation. But we became the first in-house coding academy in the city and in the county. And that's when the business started to take a different shape. And that was kind of big win number one. The macro industry of co-working started to blow up shortly after. So we had these tailwinds of flexible office needs, WeWork's growth. And so more and more of what we were trying to do made sense to a lot more people. We outgrew 3 spaces in Fat Village. We kept tacking on warehouse square footage and tacking on warehouse square footage. And ultimately we ended up needing a second location. And now the trajectory is up and to the right from here.
Yeah. So that Fat Village location, you moved out of there now, right?
Currently, yep.
How did that decision come about?
Yeah, so it was completely not mine. I wish we were still there. Fat Village is no longer, right? So they are redeveloping the area, and there's disappointment and challenges and how everything kind of took place there. But we knew what we were signing up for in a district like that, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that this is probably a redevelopment play. And the ownership was pretty transparent. I think the only difference is that we were promised that we would be able to stay through that evolution. So when push came to shove and we actually had to up and leave, this is where my biggest pain in running this type of business really comes in, is that navigating construction, real estate, leasing, fundraising as it relates to that is just so timely and intensive and very hard to execute on a calendar timeline that you needed to.
Right.
So, we went through those pains in Fat Village. We're currently rebuilding our next location in that area, but we wish we were open right now. We wish we could make the timing work perfectly.
Sure.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. So you decided now you're doing another.
Yes, that's right. So we'll, we built a strong contingent of members in Flagler Village area. Fat Village as a brand is kind of tied to that particular property.
Mm-hmm.
So the general Flagler Village area is really where a lot of our members live and would like to do business. So we're going to be launching our new location. We're very close to going public with that announcement of the address, but things are moving there. We will definitely be in Flagler Village. In the interim, we're expanding the downtown space here, the building that we're in right now.
Yes.
We're actually increasing our office capacity by 100%. So we're putting another 25 offices over there.
Cool.
So it's exciting times, and I think more importantly, we've started to really understand who we are as a company and as a club, understanding who our customer is more. And there's some important details that got us there, the most being the pandemic.
Yeah. Right. That was huge.
Yeah, the change in everything for us catalyzed, really repositioned us as a company, but we came out so much stronger as a brand and an offering that we've learned how we're going to grow with a lot more confidence. So
you made a big impact here in Fort Lauderdale. You live in Nashville. You go back and forth. That's a lot, commuting back and forth.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about going into other cities, Nashville or?
100%. Yeah. So trajectory for us is into new markets. We are going to stay regional first with this weirdness from me, because I do split time in Nashville, and Nashville's home. As a Floridian, I still struggle admitting that, but Nashville is my current home. Yeah. So we have a lot of due diligence in that market. It's also a very healthy, very strong creative class community. And we're ready to move into that location, into that market as well. That will probably come after we build out our Flagler Village location. We're going to run an experiment in Nashville pretty soon. But South Florida is still really important for us. The network effects and overlap of where our clubhouses are located from a regional strategy is really important.
So when you say regional, are you looking at other locations in South Florida right now?
Yeah. So we've started, most of our R&D is north. We, before the pandemic, decided that we were probably going to skip jumping into Miami and head to Palm Beach and continue north, hit Tampa and Orlando and grow that way. I think that, we've had this once in a generation phenomenon from the pandemic and the movement in the tech community into South Florida. So we're relooking at Miami as a location. And I think that at this point, it would bring a lot of value to our current members, right? So taking the neighborhood approach like we do, which is an important distinction, we are not really market driven as much as we are neighborhood driven. And from our real estate strategy, we want to serve remote workers and the creative class community that's in their apartment or in their house all day long that needs to get out of the house. That's where we want to bring value. So the driver for our decisions are really in dense neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's nice being downtown like we are here, but our Flagler Village location is relevant because it's accessible and it's an exciting neighborhood, but we had a large contingency of people that would walk and ride a bike because it's around the corner.
So I'm going to pivot for just a second and ask you about a concept that's right over here, society,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So that's Adam Newman
Mhm.
from WeWorks. And the concept is let's have everybody live, work, never leave that building except maybe to go to the wharf and,
Yep.
stagger home. But what do you think of that?
I think it's relevant. So the timeliness, and obviously, as someone in the industry, I've spent a lot of time looking at WeWork and following the Adam Newman story, and there's a lot of oxygen that's being taken up nowadays with the rebirth of Flow and Adam Newman's new project. But I think the underlying, rather than getting the semantics of operational decisions and what has happened with WeWork, and I think that the vision has always been strong, and I think the evolution from WeWork to Flow, the residential concept, is in line with a lot of the things that we're attacking right now. In that we know that our users need to get out of their house. They benefit from community. Community is the most overused term in my industry. It's a really cheap way of applying something that's very tangible if you do it well into something that is a commodity driven office space, right? So I'm very careful about how much we use the word community, but we are a community led company. And I think that Adam Newman's intentions are to build that value at the real community level where the amenities and the connections are very real. And I think that that's an interesting discussion. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So when you say that too, so what's going through my mind is, we're a community bank, right? So that used to mean, geographically, right? You're a geographic community. But now, as you're saying, now we have digital communities. We have other communities that expand beyond the geographic location, but are more aligned with interests and what are you working on, or what is your affinity group, right?
That's right.
And so, those are different things that we're discussing too as a bank. Like, how do we identify those groups and form digital communities? But very interesting. So, you got one of the things you said as advice was, don't try to do two businesses at the same time or multiple businesses, but you are doing it. So, which one is in your raising a young family? Which one is? But we'll keep that out for now. So we'll just talk business.
Sure.
Which of the businesses is more demanding or takes more of your time?
Yeah. So, I used to have a very specific weekly schedule, and certainly fires would come up, but I would allocate my time and try to time box everything because it felt like the only way I could power through two small businesses at the time. But we managed to get both startups bootstrapped and on a 7-figure run rate with a very small team and with very little outside capital. And so we were, in the early days, my software company was very, very demanding. And I think that we've grown to the place where we have enough infrastructure and management in place where it's a very different story now. And I'm able to lean in significantly to what I think is a very critical time at GP. Because I see the opportunity. I'm excited about what we're doing. Like I said, we came out of the pandemic with a really solidification of who we are and what we're doing. And I'm ready to really go all in on and to see where we can take GP. It is difficult managing two companies. There was a period where we were so small that I was doing it all and managing a family. The balance conversation of that is something maybe we can get into in a little bit, but it was very, very difficult in the beginning to the point where relationships are strained. It's just everything is difficult. Sleep, health. You lost track of a lot of things that I went into as important. And so I don't think it's the right path. It's just where I found myself, and I committed to fighting through it. And that's kind of how I'm cut. That's the cloth that I'm made from. But I think that I was playing business on hard mode for sure.
Yeah. So a couple of the things that I usually ask everybody. One is, so it sounds like you were able to, you don't have any great bank stories. So it doesn't sound like
I have anti-bank stories.
You have anti-bank stories, which I'm happy to hear because we like to hear about those and try to solve those problems for entrepreneurs. But how about mentors?
Yeah. So mentorship is, I think it's a real unlock as a young entrepreneur. I'm not young anymore, but it's starting something early. It's important to note that that's part of the GP mission, is being around people that can help you through it, right? So it was a bit of a life hack and a business hack for me to create GP, right? Because I was stacking my own deck but also helping other people around me, right? I've since found mentors that I've been able to really invest, and they've invested in me, that have really been a difference maker. And I think I've had a standing rule that I think that one deeply invested mentor is more valuable than a handful of loosely committed mentors, right? So, there's been a dozen really strong mentors around me, but I have one person that we're really deep in, right? And the context is there, which I think is the most difficult piece, right? To really help people, you have to dive in. You have to roll up your sleeves a bit and really understand the context of everything that's going on. I really believe in the founder magic, meaning the ins and outs of your business as a founder more than the person that sits across the desk for an hour a month does, right? And so I think to be really valuable as a mentor, you have to invest at a level of context that not everybody gets to, but they still call themselves a mentor-mentee relationship. So I have one of those now, but I'm also in a group, not only GP, which is a growing area of what we're trying to do here, is invest more in the programmatic elements of that. But outside of GP, I have a group of entrepreneurs that are similar place in time. There's a couple outliers, but for the most part, we're grouped. We found a group of people that are in similar size and sometimes similar industry overlaps, which is just a huge acceleration to problem solving. Yeah. So mentorship has been massively valuable.
Is that a group that you put together, or is it like one is it like EO? Or,
so it's become organic. So there's a couple relationships from the Twitter sphere that have kind of built some guys on Twitter. We just kind of like started communicating, and then one guy he brought in 3 other people, and then all of a sudden it became a real thing. But it's become very valuable to us. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So that sounds very powerful. I'm in Vistage, which is a similar group, but
certainly
that was an organic. I didn't put that together.
Sure.
I jumped in and have found it very valuable. So let's go to the work-life balance. You talked about that a little bit. How you had to go all in on the business side. Talk a little about your experience with that.
Yeah. So on a personal level, I have a wife and 3 children now, right? We mentioned that quickly, but I have an amazing physician at home. My wife is a doctor. She has a job, right? She's got her own things going on. I have my own things going on. And then we've created this beautiful family. And we moved to Nashville away from in-laws. That wasn't the reason, but the point is we don't have a large support structure there near us. So we're doing it by ourselves and figuring it all out. And I think that there's definitely a lot of challenges in being an entrepreneur, but times 2 with a young family in a young marriage. Everything kind of happened fast in my personal life. I started the business right before I was 30, got married at 30, and kids happened very quickly. So we went from 0 to 100 very quickly.
Yeah.
Long story short, on the integration and balance conversation, I think that it's very hard to define work-life balance when you're building, right? I think that there are sacrifices that need to be made that are all trade-off decisions, right? And the lesson learned and where I'm at now is that there has to be an end game, right? I think that the commitment that I made to my wife, and I'm starting to really make good on, is that the pain has to end at some point, right? So if we look at designing a perfect life and taking a swing at some of these entrepreneurial visions can net out a highly valuable, happy life, at least monetarily, of course, right? There's other things that are involved in being happy. I don't want to get into that right now, of course, but from a business success standpoint, if those gains help our family, I want to make sure that I'm not committing to just being on the pain train forever. So I'm, 8 going on 9 years in, and it's a different ride than it was 2 years ago. By the grace of God and hard work, right? But from getting to the balance conversation, the net is you have to. I if I ever do this again, the timeline that I would commit to myself and to my family would be a lot shorter. Because I extended the pain train a little bit, right? I said, okay, we're going to do it for 3 years. That became 5 years of really tough slugging it out. And now, like I said, we're going on 9 years in, and I'm off the pain train. It's a different train now, but it's not the same level of commitment that it once was. And I don't think my family would survive if I just stayed on the tough ride forever.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on getting off the pain train, right?
Yep.
And arriving on a much smoother ride. So a lot of great lessons, a lot of, just an interesting background. Wow. Very cool. I didn't know about the football either. So, but, again, just a special place here. I mean, I think you look around this place, everybody loves it. It's a community that you've built. And, I was just thinking, I want to start doing, when we, eventually we're leaving, we do have a building we're going to at the bank. We got to become we got to grow up at some point, leave our 100 square foot office. But we're going to stay here. I mean, we're going to have a desk or something, and I want to do like an office hours here, because I'm thinking about what you said about the pain of dealing with banks. I'm thinking, if I do I do a couple hours office hour here and just say, hey, come on in, and I might not be able to solve every problem. We can't lend money to everybody, right?
Yes.
But we can point them in it. And we've done that with some of the people here, actually, where we could lend them money, but we got them money from us because we know people who
refer to other products and other relationships.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's important. And you guys, I'm so thankful for the relationship, but I think we talked a lot about my background and how it didn't involve a community bank, but our relationship and what you've built here at GP, we're not only grateful for you being a part of the story, but you've changed my dynamic and the relationship with how I should be investing further in a community bank and the importance of the small business with that relationship.
Wow.
It was hard mode, right? So I did it before the wrong way. And as we grow up, or if we do the next thing, we won't be playing on hard mode anymore.
Perfect. Well, that sounds great. We look forward to being part of your future. So anything we can do to help you, let us know. And you'll always be part of our business and our future. So anything else you want to add before we go to the lightning round with questions?
No, I'm just excited about the lightning round. I'm good.
So this is where we just hit you with first thing comes to your mind, questions. So first is a favorite quote.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I probably should go a lot deeper than this, but I have a relationship with a client who's building a really great company called Bear Performance Nutrition. And he just went on Fox News, but he has this tattooed, his slogan on his arm called Go One More. And as the guy that's cut from the cloth that just kind of beats through the bag and fights through things, it's a very non-deep quote that has been driving me through things lately. So front of mind, that's what you're going to get. Go one more.
That's great. Yeah. No, that's good. How about happiest moment in business and lowest moment in business?
Yeah. So I think launching a space like this became a very big deal for us. So the construction process is probably quickly the lowest point. So I will say that fighting through the difficulty of actually getting spaces done, and especially at our level, right? A small team, have to be bootstrapped, have to be really roll up your sleeves and get things done uniquely and creatively. Dealing with permitting and construction delays to ultimately get to a place where you're cutting the ribbon and going live. It's very different than my software life. Launching an app in the App Store, building an app and having that go live is very, very much a celebratory moment. But the complexities of construction, I don't want to be good at construction. I want to be good at building GP and building community. So the happiest moment up until now is probably just getting this thing launched after all the pain, which is the lowest moment.
Okay, that's great. How about a favorite like streaming series or movie or something to watch?
Yeah, so I'm a dad, and I don't watch a ton of TV. So I consume a lot of business content. So I have some favorite podcasts. My First Million with Sam Parr and Sean Purdy is way up there. I listen to the three that I'm religious about are Pivot Podcast, which is a tech and news relevant podcast, which is pretty popular. My First Million, which is just a down to earth young entrepreneur podcast with two great guys that are really growing in popularity. And then All In podcast, which has some of the tech industry's biggest VC names that come around the table. They're friends, and those are my three. So All In, Pivot, and My First Million are my go-to pods.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
How about books?
I read a lot of books. There's always a debate on my team about if I can actually say that I read books when I listen to them on Audible. I don't know where you stand on that, Keith, but
either way.
So the most recent exciting books, Jim McKelvey, the founder of Square, it was a Miami resident for a little bit as well. He published a book called The Innovation Stack, which I really enjoyed recently. That was a great read. The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen is a really great read recently. It goes way deep in MRR and annual recurring revenue models, which is a great geek read for me. But the most inspiring story that I've read recently was Bob Iger's story, Ride of a Lifetime, which is the CEO of Disney. And he had just a great story, and he went deep into all of the acquisitions, and is a fascinating book. And I highly recommend that one.
Oh, interesting. I heard he just joined a VC company.
Yeah, he's still making moves, right? He's still doing stuff. Yeah,
cool. How about you're working a lot, you're doing hobbies, spare time?
Yeah,
a little bit of spare time.
Not much spare time, but I'm trying to get back into shape. So the journey out of dad bod has commenced. Now that we're done having babies, I'm going to get back in shape. So getting back in the ocean a lot more, and surfing and diving is important to me. Harder to do that in Nashville. So riding bikes and running a lot more is important to me. Once I come out of a little back injury, I'll be back in the CrossFit gym. So awesome. That's what's happening now.
Hey, great. Good to hear it. And I'm going to ask favorite restaurant in Fort Lauderdale and favorite restaurant in Nashville, because a lot of us do go to Nashville too.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is a layup, but I love the fact that we're at GP and we can shoot over to Pura Vida and have a healthy meal, so I'm enjoying that. At a deeper level, I am a fan of all the restaurants that Memphis Garrett is creating here in town. So he's got Yamas and No Man's Land, the bar in town. So I try to elevate him as a local entrepreneur. And in Nashville, my favorite celebrity chef is a guy named Sean. His last name has escaped me, but the restaurant that is my pinnacle right now up there is called Audrey, and he is a celebrity level that most foodies know, and I'm embarrassed I can't remember his last name, but he's taken all of his bad experiences of being in the hospitality and food and bev industry, and he's created the what he calls the mecca of wellness for the hospitality world, the restaurant world. So there's an employee-only massage program and massage room, mental health room. There's it's an amazing approach to food, and then the product itself is incredible. It's a beautiful building, food's delicious. So Audrey in East Nashville is an amazing spot.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, Tim, that's all we have for you for today. Thank you very much for being
Keith.
on. And,
appreciate you.
Absolutely appreciate you. Thank you.
See you soon.
Wow, what a great episode, and really meaningful for us, because this is where Locality Bank started, right here at General Provision. So a lot of really good advice from Tim about trying to do too many things at once, work-life balance, which is always tough for entrepreneurs, and the value of having mentors, and also the difficulty of dealing with banks, which I'm sorry to hear from most entrepreneurs, but I'm also happy to hear for us, because that's what we're here to do, is help entrepreneurs get financing, help them get funding, help them accomplish their dreams and their missions. But you can follow our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify or whatever. And you can also connect with us at localitybank.com or on our app. Thanks. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in for Locality's Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.